What's good, guys? Fantasy Joe back here with our playoff trade targets. Going to be talking about the guys that you can acquire now that have those strong week 15, 16, and 17 schedules that are going to allow you to take your fantasy championship home this season. If you guys are new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button down below. Really helps me out. Also helps me out if you would hit that like button and leave a comment down below. I respond to all comments, so if you have any fantasy football questions about your team specific questions, start sits, waiver wire, trade advice, any of that stuff, put it in the comment section down below, and I'll respond to all comments. Let's hop right into this and start talking playoff trade targets. I'm excited for this one. Okay, so first up, we're talking quarterbacks, and I kind of grouped all these guys into one. I'm going to talk a little bit more about everybody else, but the QBs want to kind of gloss over because it's obviously, it's a onesie position that's very deep, so you probably already have a good quarterback or a good plan up for your quarterback if you've been winning a lot of games. But yeah, let me talk about these guys and why I think that they can be league winners. So Jalen Hurts, Week 15, Washington football team. Week 16, New York Giants. Week 17, Washington football team again. He has the best schedule in football for quarterbacks over that time frame. And he uses his legs as well. He's looked much better throwing the ball the last few weeks. I don't know if he's going to develop into a big time passer. I kind of doubt that happens. I don't think he's even a long term solution in Philly, but he is really good at scoring lots of fantasy points, and that's what you're looking for, obviously. I think he's going to be great down the stretch. I think he's a guy you can acquire who's going to be great till then. Yeah, Jalen Hurts is definitely a target if you need someone. Next up, we have Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has a great schedule. He plays Baltimore week 15, Cleveland week 16, and Minnesota week 17. Rodgers also has that ability to just have blow up games that very few pocket passers truly have, where he can, throw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. Um, yeah, I think Rodgers is going to be a league winner as well, and he's a guy I think you can acquire for very little right now, especially with the toe injury, coming off COVID and like not having a great game last week. Still threw for pretty close to 300 yards, I think, last week. And they really just didn't need to score touchdowns. Honestly, they won 17-0 the whole second half. It was basically just possession game, and he was a little rusty coming back, but I think he's going to be just fine. And lastly, this might be my favorite quarterback trade target. If I could get him, he'd be the one I would be going for. You might have to give up a little bit more to get him, but I think he's absolutely worth it, and that's Arizona Cardinals quarterback Kyler Murray. Murray plays Detroit week 15, Indy week 16, and Dallas week 17. And the thing about Kyler is because obviously Hurts uses his legs as well, but Kyler is just he's I think he's a better passer than Lamar Jackson is, and he still uses it. I don't think he's probably gives you 90% of the rushing, upside that a Lamar can give you on any given week. And he's already had 2 30+ point games this year. I think he has that type of ceiling for these weeks where he could be scoring you 30, 35 points. And that would, that's going to make it very tough for your team to lose, honestly. As long as you have a team that's worthy of making it to the championship and you have a quarterback who's just going off. And here's why I think he's going to be so easy to acquire. He might not play this week, and he has a bye next week. So the time to go out and strike on Kyler Murray is right now. If you were a 7-3 team or something like that, 8-2, go get Kyler and just you're gonna love it. Like you can find another fill-in quarterback replacement off of waivers. You could play Tua this week against Houston or something like that. You can trade for Kyler Murray, and I think he's going to be an excellent option and a league winner. I think a lot of people who have Kyler Murray on their team are going to win their championship this year. So he's a guy to throw out. Now let's talk running backs. Our first running back up is David Montgomery. Montgomery has been an absolute stud this year running the ball. He's looked phenomenal as a football player. And then schedule-wise, Week 15, he's got the Minnesota Vikings, 16 Seattle Seahawks, and 17 New York Giants. Great playoff schedule. He's got a great second half in general. We saw him last year finish as the RB4 because he absolutely dominated the second half of the season because he had a favorable schedule. Things are lining up very similar to how they were last year. Now, he hasn't been used as much in the passing game as he was last year, but I think, they're Damian Williams. We don't know if he's going to play for sure this week. David Montgomery is a guy I think who has a chance to, be a 70, 80% snap guy potentially if this team can be winning some games. And I think they're just going to feed him in the ground game, even if he doesn't get it going in the rushing game. I think he's going to be a guy who's got a real good chance at 20 carries basically every week Bears can, get first downs basically, as long as they're not just three and out. Which their offense looked better before the bye. You get Justin Fields another week to prepare during the bye week. Hopefully he is, improving. I think David Montgomery is going to be a player that can be acquired and can be a league winner. I think he'll have a strong second half of the season. And like I said, he's just looked really good. And they know with Justin Fields that they need to hand him the ball a ton. So I do think he's going to get a ton of volume. I think he's a guy who can win your league. I definitely try to get him now. Another RB. Excellent schedule. James Robinson. Week 15, he plays the Houston Texans. 16, the New York Jets. And week 17, a tougher matchup with the Patriots. But still, I'm super excited about James Robinson. Speaking of high volume guys, he's another one of those guys who just gets the ball handed to him because of how bad his offense is in general. No one else can really play on that offense. I mean, they've got, Marvin Jones is solid. Dan Arnold's shown flashes. But really, you have to have Trevor Lawrence throw the ball to them. And Trevor Lawrence has not been good so far this year. And yeah, I think James Robinson's going to continue to be a 17, 18 carry guy. He is utilized in the passing game, catching 3 or 4 passes or more every game, basically. And when they're down, he runs those little check downs, catches the ball 5 yards from the line of scrimmage, gets another 3 or 4 yards, and then it's just racking up points for you the whole time in garbage time. And, he punched a touchdown in last week when he only had 12 carries, I believe. Yeah, I think he's a guy who, even though you can go out and acquire right now because he wasn't heavily utilized last week, but he still had a great game for fantasy. And I think as he recovers from this heel injury, he's just going to be more and more utilized, and they're going to trust him to be the bell cow that he is. Now we've seen him utilized as. Next up for running backs, we've got 2 guys in the same team, Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. Whoever you can acquire cheaper, or if you have a preference, I would go get one of these players. Now, the reason I think Melvin Gordon has shown throughout his entire career he has a nose for the end zone, so I do like that aspect of him. But Javonte Williams is a young rookie who's got juice, and they have an extremely favorable schedule. Week 15, they had the Cincinnati Bengals. Week 16, Oakland. Las Vegas Raiders, and Week 17, the Los Angeles Chargers with that run funnel. All these teams they don't want you to. The Chargers want you to run the ball, but the Bengals and Raiders really just can't stop you. So I really think that go out, because they're splitting work, there's a good chance you could get one of these guys. And honestly, a lot of times running backs get hurt over the season. And so I think there is a chance come week 15, 16, 17 that both these backs aren't healthy anymore and you have one bell cow league winner type back. And whoever that is going to be a guy who's going to help people win fantasy championships, assuredly, with that schedule. And both of these are talented running backs. If either one of them is given the full workload, Melvin Gordon or Javonte Williams, I'd view them easily as an RB1 rest of season. Moving on to our wide receivers, we've got Deontay Johnson. Johnson plays the Tennessee Titans week 15, Kansas City Chiefs week 16, and the Cleveland Browns week 17. Deontay Johnson is a super reliable wide receiver. I view him as a wide receiver 1 rest of season. And he's a guy who's going to go out there and probably give you double-digit points each and every single week, which is super valuable for fantasy to have consistency. There's no reason he can't score touchdowns either with the heavy target load that he gets. Chase Claypool's been banged up this year. Juju's out for the rest of the year. He should get just tons of targets. He already gets basically double-digit targets every week. But, I mean, all the arrows are just pointing up for him at this point. Coming off a solid game still with Mason Rudolph last week, but once Big Ben is back, I know he's not a great thrower, but I would not be afraid of getting Deontay Johnson because of Big Ben, because Big Ben loves to throw to Deontay Johnson. So I think he's a guy I would absolutely look to acquire, and a guy who's going to, over that playoff stretch too, you're getting a ton of targets against teams like that. You could be really doing some damage. So not only consistency, but I think he has some upside to him as well that people just aren't currently realizing yet. Next up, we've got the wide receivers for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, I put all these guys up here because, it might be really hard to go out and try to trade for a CeeDee Lamb. But I think you can go out and get Amari Cooper, and if say Amari Cooper you can't, Michael Gallup might even be out in your waiver wire. Or he's going to be, a lot easier to acquire than these other two. But they play the New York Giants week 15, the Washington football team week 16, and then they have the Arizona Cardinals week 17. I really like all these options. They throw the ball a ton. Well, they don't throw the ball as much as they did last year. But they're still, with Dak out there, even a guy like Michael Gallup, he gets 6 targets in a game. He could easily go 5 for 60 and a touchdown, or even better, if it just happens to be his week that week. But I would really look for Amari Cooper if I could. He hasn't been dominating anything crazy, but Dak still really likes him. He trusts him. He's a great wide receiver, and when he's healthy, he's dynamic. He'd be the guy we're trying to go out and get. Obviously, if you can trade for CeeDee Lamb, I'd do that as well. I think he's the one on this team, but I think it is more of a 1A, 1B, or a really strong 2 role for Amari Cooper, where I don't mind, owning the 2 in an offense like this. So all of these guys are guys I would look to try to acquire for sure. Moving on, we've got some tight end options I just want to talk about. There really aren't a ton of really good tight end options because you're really looking for those studs at the tight end position. Those Travis Kelce's, Mark Andrews, Darren Wallers, maybe even TJ Hawkinson is still in that group. Looking for those and really not caring as much about the matchup. But Logan Thomas has a great playoff schedule. He's a guy who could be on your waiver wire right now as well. I would look to add, and if he's not, you could probably trade for him on the cheap. He might not play for a while, but if you are a 7-win team or more right now, you could acquire him, hold him for a little bit, and then start playing him and really be able to reap the benefits of that. And another name I could put out there that I think is easy to acquire. He was on waivers a few weeks ago. He's one of my top waiver wire ads. Hopefully you guys added him to your roster by now, but that's Dan Arnold. Dan Arnold plays Houston week 15, the Jets week 16, and the Patriots in week 17. And he's been getting, a good amount of targets each and every week, which is what you're looking for, that tight end position. Points count whether they're garbage time or not. So he's basically been like the number 1 wide receiver for this team, consistency-wise and target-wise. And yeah, he used to be a wide receiver, playing that tight end spot. I would love to go out and get Dan Arnold. I think you can acquire both these players on cheap. Logan Thomas's schedule as well. He plays Philly in week 15 and 17 and plays Dallas week 16. So another great option. I want to throw out 2 other names for running backs that I would look to acquire as well. Leonard Fournette has a great playoff schedule, and so does Ronald Jones. I think people should be handcuffing Leonard Fournette with Ronald Jones going into the playoffs if you have him. And I think Ronald Jones is one of the most high upside handcuffs that's probably out in your waiver wire still. I do think that if Leonard Fournette goes down, which he's had an injury history before, Ronald Jones could step right into that role with a favorable playoff schedule, really do some damage for that team. And they've got a great offensive line, great offense. Leonard Fournette is getting, not only the rushing work, but the passing work as well right now. That makes him dynamic for fantasy and makes him very consistent as well. And with an offense like that, gives him the opportunity for multiple touchdown, big blow-up games. Those would be some names I would also be looking to acquire or add for depth onto your rosters. If you guys have made it to this point in the video, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section down below. I'll respond to all comments. This has been Fantasy Joe. Thank you guys for watching.